Okay. Hi, my name is Timo Tjahjanto. I'm a filmmaker based in Indonesia. And yeah, nice to meet you guys.
Okay, good, good. So I'm gonna start a bit opposite than I do usually, since I read that you have like a number of projects on the pipeline coming soon. Can you tell me a bit what are you working on now? What we will see next?
Well, sort of yes and no, but like basically the one thing that's right now is the most visible one is actually I am on the process of finishing Nobody 2. I'll be going to LA and Vancouver soon to finish some of the editing aspects and then moving on to scoring and visual effects and all that online stuff. And I'm excited for that just because, it is my American film debut, so I have so much interesting experience working on it. Other than that, there is one or two American projects on the pipe, but at the same time, I'm also eager to continue my collaboration with Netflix Indonesia, just because there are certain films that I'm hopefully will be shooting by either the end of next year or sometimes early 2026.
You said 7?
Huh?
You said 7. 7 films?
Oh no, no, like around 2 films.
Okay.
Around
okay.
2 films, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Good, good. So how is it working with Netflix now that you have been for some time?
I honestly I've been very comfortable working with Netflix. I used to be, I think with as time progresses, your priorities in terms of how you see where your film is going to be distributed sort of evolve. I'm still in a lot of ways like a purist when it comes to showing a film as a theatrical experience. Having said that, there is some weird tension, especially when we are talking about the local cinema. When it comes to showing your film in the local cinema, I always said to my audience that the hardest audience to predict is the Indonesian audience for me, just because I feel I could never really pinpoint what do they want, like what's their taste, what do they like out of a film, I only know how to make my kind of film, so it's really at the end for me, take it or leave it. If you like it, then I'm happy. If you don't, I don't know what else to do. So in that way, I kind of always feel the anxiety of having to compete with a lot of very competitive franchises in Indonesian film, and also like horrors. There's a bunch of horror right now coming out, and it's relentless. And I feel like that's probably more of a game for people who like that, that rush of wanting to be number one in the cinema. Like I think right now I'm kind of like putting a break on that, until I figure out what the market really wants. But for now, I love my collaboration with Netflix. I love the idea of I do have action ideas that I want to do, that Netflix seems to be keen on collaborating with me with, So I'm content with that. I'm really happy, and I think there's nothing wrong with existing in a streaming sort of world. I think the beauty is I was also relish on the idea that I have non-Indonesian fans, so I think in a way that they can enjoy my films almost as instantaneously as my Indonesian audience. That's a beautiful thing for me. So,
but does Netflix put any restrictions on you? Let's say content-wise, is there some sort of what do they? Yeah.
I mean, they do have notes, I guess. When it comes to, and I have to admit, one of the thing that I was never known for a filmmaker who kind of make my films concise and short. My film tend to be a long ride, for better or worse. And I'm always insistent on telling a complete character, you know, like, and you know, like in my films there tend to be quite a lot of characters, so I guess in that sense, you know, Netflix says like, hey, you know, like, can we negotiate on our time duration? And they've been really generous with it. Like they, you know, I think if I'm releasing my film in a cinema, I will fight a lot of losing battles just because in the cinema, like duration, it's more. Films in the cinema is more reliant on duration rather than like in a streamer, right?
Yeah.
And Netflix do sometimes like, hey, isn't this too much? But like, I never felt like the collaboration becomes like, you know, like, obviously never dictatorial, and also never feel like, oh, they're trying to restrict my creativity, you know. So so far it's been really healthy, and I love them for it, you know.
Okay, good. And tell me a bit about Shadow Strays, because okay, I feel that the film is like very much non-political correct, which is difficult to do now. So I was wondering what's your take on that.
Well, the weird thing is like I never really was too conscious about like what's going on in Indonesia at that point and all that stuff. I think if any, I feel the real world sometimes become a projection of what we have in the cinema, in the film world, you know. I think when I wrote The Shadow Strays, my influence was clear. I just want to be. I love Abel Ferrara, you know. Like I think the world of corruption and sleaziness and sadistic sort of like, you know, antagonists or anti-heroes, you know. Like I really love those elements, and I love John Woo, you know. Like so, what better way to sort of like combine it all together in this sort of prime sort of like saga, you know, like, so I want to do it, and I always have like such a pessimistic view of the government or the authority. So I think it was in the film, and then later on it's sort of like become a projection of what's going on in Indonesia or something. So it's almost coincidental, and I love political incorrectness, you know, like I think being a filmmaker, you should still be able to voice your sort of, oh well, this is not comfortable. Well, fuck it, man. Like, you know, the real world is not comfortable at all. You know. So yeah.
Yeah. So is there a parallel with this story with Ariel and Suemitro that we see and what is happening in the film? You did that on purpose, or?
Yes. I mean, like I think here's the thing. Like, it wasn't like a jab at specific people. Like I think I'm generally feel very critical of the world of a nepotistic world. You know, I'm not saying nepotism is bad. You know, sometimes it can be used for an advantage. But like, I think I always observe that. Oh well, sometimes people tend to be glorifying the idea of like, oh yeah, this is like an empire of family that's been running these things forever, you know. I've been very critical. I feel like I'm very critical of that, you know. I always believe individuality trumps, you know, like I think being your own man sort of trumps a lot of things, you know, or being your own woman in Shadow Stray's case, you know. So that's just a reflection of what I see generally, and if it sort of like hits certain theme that's going on in Indonesia at the time, you know, purely coincidental, you know, like I'm not into attacking specific people, you know, like that's just not me. Because at the end, film is still a fictional world, you know. So yeah.
Okay. And in the initial scene of the film, you have the protagonist like killing a lot of yakuza. Why yakuza?
I think it's just there's something extremely funny about. I love Japanese, you know, like Chambara films. You know, like I definitely am into the whole ninja lore. You know. Lone Wolf and Cub is actually a huge inspiration for this film, like visual-wise and everything. But I always feel if you're gonna make a movie about your own version of ninja, you might as well make a little sort of like ironic fun at the country of origin. And I think there's something ridiculously funny about about Japanese people being killed by ninjas that aren't even Japanese. You know, like it's just for me, it's a gallow humor. You know, so yeah, I mean, I take pleasure in that. You know, so yeah.
So for you, having humor even in a setting in a movie like this is very violent and action-wise, you think it's important to have some humor here?
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, look, I think that a lot of people still don't realize like death and violence and humor just go very sort of like side by side, well side by side. And I think the French realize that, you know, like I always feel like there is a very sort of here's the thing. I always feel like you know, everybody fears death, right? And I think when you approach death with a little bit of humor and irony, you know, I think Voltaire he once quote that, you know, I guess my time's up, you know, like something like that as his last words, you know, like I think there's something really, really nice about that, knowing that this is like beyond your control, and you know, the only way to approach it is like with a touch of laughter, you know, and I put that, I try to put that in every aspect of my films, you know, yeah.
And tell me a bit about this scene with the cars and the gunshots. It's very John Woo-like. So how did you
Yeah, I mean, like
express it?
that's definitely that's definitely where the John Woo element comes. You know, like today, weirdly enough, we are going to see a showing of like Hard Boiled in this festival, and Hard Boiled has always been one of my, I guess it's definitely top 3 John Woo. You know, my top 3 I always mention. Sometimes it's changed, but like usually my top 3 is a bullet in the head, and then Hard Boiled, and then the third one, A Better Tomorrow. You know, like so this is definitely, look, man, I could never do what John Woo can do. You know, like I think he has a certain madness to him that is still unbeatable. And I think Hard Boiled is like peak John Woo. You know, but I always love that the idea that every action movie require a warehouse scene, you know, and I think that's just something that I feel like, nah, man, if it's possible, I want to have a warehouse scene in every of my action films.
Okay. All right. And about the final scene where the 2 women fight it out, it's like one of the most brutal fighting scene I've ever seen. Because they are equal. I think that's
yes,
that's a
it's
good
essentially thing. It's like it's a master who's clouded, whose mind is clouded by conflicts and her inability to sort of express her humanity, and therefore she becomes a flawed fighter, you know, and also maybe in a weird way hesitation to kill her own student, you know, like there is that. At the same time, her student is evolving, like her student, you know, already discovered her humanity, and she's evolving into this, you know, like force of nature that refused to sort of like die, you know. So I always love that. I always love the idea that, oh yeah, in a film like this, as in true to like, you know, like Greek tragedy or like samurai films, sometimes the master is the one who end up learning from the students, you know, like so. Look, I'm proud of the girls. You know, I think they did an amazing job considering they never practiced martial arts before. So I told them like, look, you guys gotta understand that by the end of the fight, it's no longer about technique. It's about like emotions. It's about something that I think this is also specifically true to women, to female, because they have that ability to sort of be very in tune with their emotional side. You know. And in that sense, it becomes the better for it, you know. So by the end, I no longer care about like, oh, the choreography has to be cool. No, the choreography has to be raw, visceral, and sort of portrays the frustration of your humanity wants to come out, but like the system makes you repress it. So yeah.
And since you mentioned, how did you train them? Because Aurora Ribero was like a model before or something. Like
she was in a film called Like and Share. I think you've seen it.
Yeah,
you know, she's amazing in it. Hana, she's an actress as well. But like, I just told them like, look, this is gonna be in a way your biggest mission in life and also mine, because like I've been working with Joe Taslim and Iko and like people who are very athletic, and now you guys never have done this before. So let's do this together. Let's be very hardcore in our approach. And we all shake hands, like this is gonna be, at a certain point, this is gonna suck so bad, it's gonna be to the point where, well, this is not fun anymore, and it gets to that point, like where we all kind of like having this never-ending fight, and they're just like, oh man, my God, what are we doing? Like this is painful, this is suffering, But by the end, like once we finish shooting that scene, they hug it out, they cry together, and they laugh, because it's like crossing the, like those crazy people who cross the Atlantic to set off a record, I think at some point they all think like, man, I must be crazy to be doing this, and I think that's a similar experience that they went through. So yeah.
Okay. In general, how did the casting work for the film?
Well, for casting, I think Aurora is somebody that I always want to work with. Like the moment I watch Like and Share, I say I don't want anybody else but her. I think you need to have somebody who never have experience for martial arts, just because you want to see her being a totally different beast. As for Hana playing Umbra, Umbra actually there was like other choices before, and unfortunately the other choice wasn't available, but fortunately too, that's when I actually say like, you know what, I want to give Hana, because Hana actually has been casting for my films like 2 or 3 times before, and she always didn't get the role.
Okay.
But like for this point, I was like thinking, you know what, I think she can pull it off, because Hana is actually, at the time when she was acting in the film, she was like 30, 31. And the challenge is like she's portraying somebody who's supposed to be in her early to mid 40s, So she was playing a much older character. And I think she pulled it off, like I think the beauty with Hana, she also knows how to speak Japanese, so every Japanese line that she speaks it fluently. So yeah, and the rest is just there's Andri Mashadi as Ariel, the guy with the mask, and then there's Adipati Dolken as the corrupt cop, and Christo and Ali as the Monji the kid. I think it's just all stems from my wanting to work with like younger generation actors. Like I've been working with some really cool veteran actor like Joe and Iko and all that stuff, and I was feeling like, you know what, I really want to work with the younger guys. I think in the Shadow Strays, it's actually my first time finally feeling like the old guy on the set. I've been working in the Indonesian film industry for more than 15 years now. And I remember when I did like Macabre, Rumah Dara, like I was like, oh, look at that young director, I was 27 when I did that, like, so everybody's calling me the young guy. And now everybody's calling me like uncle, like so it's like a weird, sad and beautiful thing, So yeah.
And what about the guy who plays Troika? Who is that?
Oh, like Troika, yeah. So basically, he's like a French Indonesian guy who used to be a basketball center athlete, and I think because of a leg injury, he has to stop his professional basketball career. So he always ended up playing creatures before. So he was in a lot of like makeup and a lot of like monster suit in Indonesian horror films. But I think I also recognize that, you know what, it's weird that people are covering his face, because I think he has a beautiful face. He looks like a French guy, but like I decided, you know what, I don't want a French villain, I want a Russian villain. Like, so I think that looks cool. Like I think, again, it's back to the 80s, sort of like American cinema, which always portray Russians as the villain. So I cast him, and he practiced all his Russian lines, and he has a charm in the screen. So,
Okay,
yeah.
Good. And having Yayan Ruhian, I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly.
Yayan Ruhian, yeah.
So how is he? Did he also wasn't working on the choreographies or no?
Not really. No. I mean, I always want to work with Yayan since the raid, the Nikon Soras on the earlier draft of the script, he's actually in there, so there is a version in The Night Comes For Us where Yayan is actually quite a big character in it. But like because the script keeps on evolving and all that stuff, and so at the end like we have to cut out Yayan, and I was like, man, like here is a guy who's so good at what he's doing, and we are not getting any younger, you know. So when is my time? So finally, I have decided like, okay, well, maybe he can be a cameo here, and if this film is successful enough, we can sort of like set up for the sequel, you know. So if a sequel happens, you know, like he'll take a much bigger part in it, you know. So yeah.
He can still fight though, right?
Oh, he's amazing. Like he just shot something with Kenji Tanigaki, who's the choreographer of Donnie Yen and all the Kenshin films. And I remember, and I know like he has a lot of fight scenes in his film, in Kenji's film, and like even Joe told me like, man, Yayan is like 50, 53, 54. And he can still do like 10, 15 takes, no problem, you know. So yeah, it's all in the state of mind.
Good, good.
Yeah.
And tell me a bit about what's your opinion on Indonesian cinema nowadays?
My vision?
Your opinion.
My opinion? My opinion on the Indonesian cinema. I think I think we are reaching even a more exciting times than before. You know, like yesterday I realized there's so many better filmmaker in terms of where they want to see their vision. You know, like Angga Sasongko, for example. You know, I think he's a very smart guy who knows where the wave of Indonesian cinema is going to go to. Like that's why he has instead of making one film, he has a slate of like films, and he produces films. And by doing so, he's also discovering new Indonesian filmmakers. You know, I think that's a very important step. Hey. Sorry. Let me just. Yeah. I think that's a very important step, and I think now with the birth of younger Indonesian filmmakers who have a different voice, who have a different story they want to tell, things are getting more colorful. You know, I love horror. I grew up from horror, and I started as a horror filmmaker, and I still feel I'm a horror filmmaker. But honestly, I don't think we can survive. I think creatively we're going to be bankrupt if all we do is horror films, you know. And now there is filmmakers who want to talk about K-pop, who wants to talk about maybe in a weird way the independent movies are already starting the LGBT sort of themes, and I think that's necessary, you know. Otherwise, we are not evoluting, you know. I guess even though the Thai are much less productive in terms of quantity, but I think every time they manage to do a film, they always kind of nail it better in terms of like social themes and all that stuff. You know, yesterday I watched Paradise of Thorn, an amazing film. Like I was thinking, like, are we capable of making something like that? You know, and I hope sooner we can do that. You know.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it.
All right.
Thank you very